Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is One Day Today. We are on episode 83 and going strong. I am really excited about both the guests we have today. And, this two people I've had conversations with in the last few weeks. And I'm just inspired by both of them. And I'm just really excited to hear them share about, how they got to just be the amazing souls that they are and what led to that. And that's what's really honoring and humbling about this stage. And since we started this almost exactly a year ago, I think it was end of March, beginning of April that we started this amid new pandemic experience of this world. And what's really humbling and honoring about the stage is just like, no matter where people are from and what they've experienced in their circumstances, who they're, no matter what creed, what color, who they are, who they pray to or don't pray to, there's always something that they faced that has allowed them and overcome, that has allowed them to be who they are and just like truly and fully. And it's just like, it just, begs the question, like, who are we? Who am I? And who are you? And like, how do we discover that? What does that mean? Like, we're born into this world with, this experience of our reality and how we see ourselves as, through our circumstances and through what our parents teach us and through what our culture teaches us. And it's kind of miraculous to discover, what's beyond the story that we inherit in our circumstances. And, when we're blocked, the things that the tragedy or the trauma or the things that happen to us, they feel like obstacles at the time, and they feel like things that stop us in our tracks. And it's kind of feels ironic, but the very things that are stopping us are our avenue and our opportunity to overcome, to transcend, to transform. What's blocking us is that's our avenue to transcend and to be who we are fully. And that's really what we hold this space for, is to really share the gift that you are, and how you discovered that. Because no matter who you are, you have something unique, something beautiful to contribute to us all. And whether you know exactly what that is, or you have no idea and you're just looking, or you don't believe me and you don't think you have a gift, I assure you, you have gifts that contribute to something way bigger than your idea of who you are. Because, speaking personally, my idea of who I was a very limiting idea. I thought I was, I was a victim of my circumstances growing up. I've shared this story a lot. I was a quarter black, half Jewish Italian kid, bullied for being fat and didn't feel like I fit in. And I was a victim of my circumstances, but that was my story. And when I discovered that I made that whole story up, that I don't belong, when I saw that this was just my idea of myself, my idea of God was just that, it was an idea. Who I am is much bigger than my perception and my point of view of myself. And what this world is, what this universe is much bigger than the limitations of what my mind says it is. And that's what we're opening up is in this conversation, in this format, is who are you? And how did you come to discover that? And that it's the magic of what unfolds, that when we discover ourselves to be much greater than the limitations of what our mind says. And I'm just really excited and honored to have our guest today. But first, let me welcome our co-host, Matthew. Matthew, what's up, brother? Long time no see.
Yeah, no, I've missed a couple of episodes. I'm sorry about that. Time changes are weird. Like we don't do daylight savings time here on Hawaii, and I was not tuned in to what was happening on the mainland. And for that, I apologize. That was a bit of a lapse on my part. But I'm back. I got it down now. I finally figured it out, and it's like I don't know if anyone else relates to this experience, but like I feel like a lot of times I'm on a bit of an emotional roller coaster where it's just high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low. And it feels like over the last few months, I mean, like I can really go back the last few years, but like the last few months, it feels like that's been slowly settling. And while the roller coaster is still there, the highs aren't quite as drastically different from the lows. And it feels like I'm just kind of like settling into this new level of contentment that I'm really starting to appreciate. Like it feels like all the little pieces that have been, um, not, like I haven't quite seen where they fit, that I've discovered over the last 10 years, like all these little pieces, these little puzzle pieces that I've discovered about what I am and like what I'm here to be and to teach, over the last 10 years, like they're really starting to form a bigger picture. Like I'm starting to see the end of the puzzle, maybe, possibly. And if not, that's okay too. Like it's, whatever. Um, but yeah, like this, it feels like things are really starting to flow, and I'm very much appreciating and enjoying that. Um, and in that, something you just said, about the acceptance, like that's something that has really struck me over the last couple of days. Um, in that, you know, I know you talk about this a lot. I've talked about this a lot. A lot of our guests have talked about this. That feeling of not being enough. And because of that feeling of not being enough, there's this sense of being like having to try to be accepted by others. Like, so having to try to fit into a society or a group or whatever, and like actually changing our behavior and our look and the way we speak simply to try to fit in with a group so that we can feel some level of acceptance.
Right.
And like this is something that I have played with over the last 3 or 4 years, but like this past weekend really came into sharp focus, which is the most valuable thing is simply to be authentic.
Mm.
Like in a world where most everything that exists in mainstream society is fake, the most valuable thing is authenticity.
Yeah.
And I've trusted that for years, but like that value has only been, um, realized by having my basic needs met. Like I've never gone hungry. I've never gone without having to sleep out. I've never had to sleep out in the cold. I've never had to sleep out in the rain. But it's just been basic needs.
Mm.
And it's only been in the past few months that like a deeper level of authenticity has been like I haven't been as scared to really be authentic over the last few months. And so like more and more of that is coming out more and more often. And the value that other people see in it, has inspired them to put me in a position where I'm actually starting to thrive instead of just survive.
I love it. You said so many things that really strike a chord with me, and it's like one thing you said is like what I'm trying to be, or instead of what am I trying to do, and it's like, and it says we're always doing things. Humans, like verb is every day has verbs. We're always running, swimming, walking, jumping, jogging, something. But it's like, how do we do those things? Are we doing those things happily and joyfully, or are we doing them sad and frustrated and depressed and angrily? And it's like who we're being and what we're being impacts how we do the things that we do. And and what you're saying about authenticity, I've had the same experience. And my most of my life, just being on autopilot and being who I ended up being just by autopilot of my own experience growing up is, I'm trying to look, in order to survive, like as you said, I'm avoiding looking bad and I'm trying to look good. And ultimately, I'm trying to get people's acceptance. I'm trying to get their approval. I'm trying to get their affirmations. And it's like, and what I've discovered is like when I'm actually being me, like truly being me, the impact and the value I'm able to give others is exponentially far exceeds anything I ever imagined I can do, and will make, rather than when I'm pretending to be somebody else or trying to be somebody else. Like just like it's just there's no comparison to when I'm actually like because most of my life I've been afraid to share myself and what I value, what my commitments are, and what in fear of those people accepting me. And when I'm actually being myself, the amount of impact I have on others is just just there's no comparison compared to when I'm trying to be someone else and just avoiding looking bad and trying to look good.
Yeah, exactly. And just to like put that onto a real world example really fast, to map that onto actual experience. Um, for me, it has been trusting those moments when it feels appropriate to question other people's beliefs,
Hmm.
and not to like when that happens, it's not an attack. Like before, I was trying to question other people's beliefs. And so like Matthew would get involved, the mind would get involved, and it would often turn into an argument or a debate. And a lot of times both people would walk away unsatisfied. Like I would walk away frustrated, they would walk away frustrated. Um, but in like letting go of the need to convince anyone of anything,
Hmm.
now there's this relaxation around it. And there's that there's this deeper knowing from that, I talk about the thing that's bigger than me, whether that be God or the Holy Spirit, or love or whatever. Like it's just that thing that is bigger than me. And with the letting go of the need to convince people, because I was convinced that people needed to change because this world is an awful place. Um, Now it's much more of a like there's a recognition of when someone is actually open to having their beliefs challenged.
Hmm.
And there's a much softer approach that comes out to like just gently tease the the convictions away, to like pry behind their convictions. And like it's not you believe this and so you're wrong. It's well, what about that is so important to you? Or like it's always a question. It's always a very gentle question that comes out, and it's just one that's like it seems to like stop them in their tracks. And an actual conversation flows out of that, as opposed to a debate. And that actually turned into this whole weekend retreat that I just put on at the place I'm living now. We actually had 6 other people come in, and we actually spent the entire weekend diving into things like this. And from that, it feels just like there's roots growing for something new to be created here. And the total shift happened in the house. Like there's this feeling of family now and support and love, whereas before it was a little bit more disjointed. And so that's, yeah, I hope that's something that can translate into what most people are hearing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it opens up a conversation and connection, where we can like it's like an intimacy when we can be known, fully know, and be fully known, and not pretend that we have the ever expanding universe. We have all the answers solely in our head. It's have that humility that allows space to see the humanity. Despite it's okay if we don't agree. What can we create, and where can we meet together to actually experience each other regardless of our beliefs, because our beliefs have nothing to do with who we are and who our neighbors are. And I think it's a powerful thing to experience, and that's why this stage and this foundation is just so powerful for me. It's just like I experience the humanity as well as the divinity in all, and it's something that I wouldn't trade it for the world, because there's so much beauty and power in looking for that, as opposed to looking for the differences. And that's what we're holding this space for. On that note, let's welcome our first guest. Let's welcome to the stage Emily and Bruce. Welcome, Emily.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Everything you guys just said resonated with me completely. I mean, I just felt it, because I've been through the traumas. I've had limiting beliefs, and over my lifetime, I've had to shed some beliefs where, sometimes you hold on to them and you think that my belief is true. And then you just realize one day I was wrong. I was wrong for believing that. And, Matthew, you were talking about puzzle pieces, and what do those puzzle pieces mean for our journey and our path and our purpose? And, for me, it was the trauma, it was the life, it was, there's so many puzzle pieces. And I feel like at this point in my life, I've put a lot of those puzzle pieces together, and I finally feel like I'm in a good place. I've shed a lot of that trauma. I grew up in California. I'm in Nashville now. And, very typical story, single mom, right? Me and my sister raised by a single mom. We didn't know our dad. My parents divorced when I was a baby, and he just was never part of our life. He was he was an addict and just didn't participate in anything with us. And we moved around a lot. So I was always having to learn how to make friends and be social, and be in environments that were new and adapt. And that's one of those puzzle pieces, because I feel like I can kind of acclimate to any environment that I'm in. And I can mingle with different people. It doesn't matter, who they are. I am welcoming to so many different people, whether different races, different cultures, different religions. And then when I was 13, my mom committed suicide. And my sister and I went to live with different family members. We moved around. I lived with 3 different family members, and then on my own at 17, living with a boyfriend, still in high school. And, that early life just shaped the trajectory of my direction and where I was going to go, where I was going to end up. And, married, sometimes we make poor relationship choices. Not sometimes, a lot of times we do, but it's actually not really a poor choice when you look back on it, because it was part of your learning experience. It was part of making me stronger, all of those things that I went through. And, it, like the suicide, definitely trauma that I carried with me throughout my life, didn't deal with it, didn't know that it still was just kind of floating around in me, didn't know that it was a trigger for some emotional stuff that I had. I didn't know how it would influence or impact relationships. And, when my children were young, I went through a divorce. It was a very difficult divorce. And then I went to graduate school, and I was like, I've got to heal myself. I've got to heal my children. So I went and I got a psychology degree. And I started to meet just wonderful people from around the world. I felt like I was expanding my beliefs. I was shedding the old me, the traumatized me. And, then I went to, after my master's in psychology, I went on to pursue behavior analysis. And then I learned even more about my behavior. And Matthew, as you were talking about your beliefs, it's just part of our, the 3 levels of selection, which are your genetic, which is phylogenetic, ontogenetic, which is your conditioning, and then cultural. And those shape all of our beliefs. And we carry those with us through our lifetime, and we don't realize how influenced we are by those people that we were surrounded by as we grew up, our friends, our families. And I always like to describe it as like a lint roller. You take a lint roller and you roll it across a dirty ground, and it just accumulates a bunch of stuff, but that's not original to the lint roller. If you shed that piece of paper, it's clean again. And I feel like for me, the last 10 years has been like a shedding of that paper, just getting rid of things that weren't original to me. And Abram, you were talking about spirit and connecting in the universe. And that's how I feel as well. Like, we are all connected. We can connect to that source within us. And, we do it in different ways. People have different beliefs surrounding that. And, when we do connect, we do start that healing process. And for me, that's been happening. That's been an ongoing process, which, I feel it every single day. I feel that connection. But, that's part of one of those puzzle pieces. The behavior analysis, the psychology, the trauma in my early lifetime, all of those puzzle pieces led me to what I do now, which is, I work with children with special needs, mostly children on the autism spectrum. And I just relate to them so well because I feel like, I know what it's like to not always fit in. I know what it's like to sometimes feel rejected. I know what it's like to be different. And I get to teach them how to play and how to be social and language skills, and it's wonderful. And then that led me to developing an app to connect parents and therapists so that these children could develop their play skills and their social skills. And I think that if I didn't have that part of my early life with that feeling of abandonment, which it's not really a feeling, I was abandoned both by my father and my mother. And then just always having to move, always having to learn how to be around people, new people, learning how to be social, learning how to put on that happy face, even if you're just, broken inside, and just move every single day, even if you just don't feel like getting out of bed. For me, it was that survival piece, like you guys both mentioned. I always felt like I was in survival mode, and I didn't ever want to break any rules because I always felt like if I do something wrong, nobody's going to come bail me out of jail. Nobody's going to pick me up on the side of the road. Nobody's going to help me out. I was surviving. I was never thriving. And I feel like in the past 10 years, I've been thriving, but it was a hard time getting there. But at the same time, that struggle just made me stronger. And it's provided a wonderful foundation. And I think that when we can see that, when we are going through our struggles, like that foundation piece of it, it's going to get better. And you're just going to take what you've been through, and maybe you can inspire other people. You can help other people. You can empathize. A lot of people think empathy is like, oh, well, my parent committed suicide too, so I understand what that feels like. But empathy really encompasses all suffering. So if you've ever suffered in a tremendous way, which I think most of us have, right? Trauma is not just losing a parent or losing a child or losing a sibling or being abused. Trauma is like a spectrum, like the autism spectrum. You can't disregard somebody's trauma if they went through something that traumatized them. Even if it was just being yelled at, that was their trauma that they have to overcome in their lifetime. But it's just part of that whole piece of healing and empathizing with people and understanding your suffering is my suffering. I feel what you're feeling. And so how can I help you? How can I inspire you? How can I be somebody just to hold your hand through this process? And so that's what it was for me. Everything that I went through, it really made me a stronger person. And, I'm trying to think of what else to say about my story, but it really did point me in the direction of where I am now. And I'm so thankful that I did the route of psychology, then behavior analysis, because now I know so much about behavior that I'm able to work on my own behaviors and kind of unravel and untangle those traumas and recognize what a stimulus might be that evokes a response that I used to have in the past that might make me feel bad or make me sad for days or make me angry. And I think that's part of this as well, is like sharing that piece of it with people and helping them to see like, oh, okay, this is what's going on with you. This is a stimulus. And that's why every time you see that person or that thing or this happens, it kind of, you go down that rabbit hole again and you're stuck. And just helping people get unstuck is a wonderful thing. And that's my story. I don't know, Abram and Matthew, if you want to talk any more about that, but yeah, like those traumas, that belief, when everything that you guys said, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And I love that you both shared that, because it just shows no matter what your story is, we're all going through something similar like that. And this past year has been crazy with our experiences with COVID. And it just kind of helps us realize what we do want, maybe, hopefully, and what our blessings are and what we should be grateful for.
Yeah. Thank you so much, first of all, Emily, for sharing your story. And it's so inspiring how you've taken all of your experiences and your traumas and turned it around, flipped it on its head. And now you're a beacon and a light to support others, and not only overcoming their traumas, but to generate more beautiful opportunities for connection, for love and affinity. And I think it's just I just really acknowledge you for what you've created, from your experience. And it's just inspiring. So thank you for that. And just what you're sharing, and just how everyone's trauma, it's the subjective experience of trauma. Like you're saying, like, who are we to say someone it's like when we compare, we despair. Not that that's saying
my trauma is worse than your trauma. And that's not really.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, it could be as simple as someone yelling at us when we were 3 years old that triggered a whole chain of events that we made it mean something. And I think it's powerful to recognize that for ourselves, and then a step beyond to recognize that for others. Because when we can hold the space to have empathy, and it's like that empathy that is so powerful, because it's like, when we're in that, like when we ourselves are in that space of trauma, it doesn't feel like there's a way out. It feels like this is the world, this is the way it is, and this is suffering, and this is just the way my life is, and there's no way out. And it's like, it's when we have empathy, it's when we can see ourselves in another, when we can see like they're experiencing pain like I have experienced, and their pain is their pain and my pain is my pain, but we can hold the space for them to rise above it and see that not only are they not alone, but they can create, like, that's their opportunity to actually impact others in overcoming their trauma. So it's like, this is the gift that we give in finding and sharing the wisdom on the other side of our trauma.
Yeah. And for me, I've talked about my app for just a second, but when my kids were young, I love doing things. I love, I've got great play skills, right? With kids. I love going to the zoo, park, everything. I love sitting on the floor with them, playing Legos, playing trains. And as they got older, like I said, I went to graduate school, and then I started working with children on the autism spectrum, and I was providing one-on-one therapy with them. And I noticed every parent would ask me, like, hey, do you know anybody that might be able to play with my child? And the answer was like, I could never find anybody. I couldn't even connect with colleagues. And so for me, I was like, why is this so difficult? And that was an awareness that I did not have. So I was lacking that awareness that families and parents of children with special needs had a difficult time getting connected for their children, so that they could have those play dates, so that they could have those experiences that my children were having. And so because of what I went through in my life, and it's kind of like, the more you go through, at some point you kind of become fearless. You're like, all right, let's just do this. Let's just take a chance. Let's just go out on a ledge. I'm going to do something. And it was that call to action for me. It was like, okay, wait a second. I'm a mom. If these were my children, if my children were going through this, I would want somebody to help me. And a lot of times these parents are in that place, like you said, they might be suffering, and they just feel like, okay, this is where we're going to be stuck forever. But if you can be that beacon of light or hope, or provide something or create something that might help other people, then, I would just tell people to do it, at least try. And so that's where my inspiration was. It was like, my kids had all these experiences and they were great. I don't want these families that I work with to be isolated all the time and not be able to go out, and like COVID, what has COVID taught us? Being isolated is just not a fun thing, right? We all want to go out and socialize. We want to go to a restaurant. We want to see our friends. We want to gather together, go see a movie. When was the last time we went to a movie theater, right? And so a lot of families don't get to do that. And so for me, I was like, this isn't fair. This is not right. I have to be part of the solution. And so, when you do have those experiences in life, I never dreamed in a million years that I would develop something to help people possibly worldwide. And over the past 2 years, my business partner and I have been developing the app. We just went live last month and on the app stores. And 5 years ago, I'd have never dreamed of that. So there are people that are probably watching that might be like, oh, I don't know what I could do. But one day something is going to occur that will inspire them, and it will nag on them so deeply. And it will be related to their life story. It will be related to that history, those traumas, the survival piece of it. I'm thriving now, no longer just surviving. I can do something. And so that's what I would just tell people is, don't count yourself out. Even if you're struggling right now, you can overcome this, and you can be a beacon of light for other people.
Yeah.
I love that you use that phrase, a beacon of light.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually something that has come up multiple times in my life, and is actually part of a vision that a group of us hold here for Hawaii, is to become beacons of light and to create a space where others can find that inner light themselves and then become that beacon of light for others. So one, thank you for that. I really, really appreciate it. And two, I feel like what you just shared, like that story of finding the app, like finding that vision to create the application, like that is a perfect example of something we talk about quite a bit here on the show, which is on the other side of trauma lies wisdom. And you're sitting in your wisdom right now, like you are actually putting that out in the world. And so I just want to take a minute to just acknowledge that and thank you for that.
Thank you.
The question that comes, like there's one particular question that is there, and it's around your ability to connect with children and to play. Was that something that you just, like, it was always there and you never lost, or was it something that you like fell away from for a while and had to rediscover? Like what is the past around that? Like, what is your story around that?
Wow, that's a great question. I think maybe because my childhood was so difficult, there were birthdays and Christmases, we didn't get anything, right? We didn't even have a tree. I remember one Christmas, my mom wrote me and my sister a card that said, I don't have the money to buy you anything, but when I do, I'm going to buy you. And she made a list of stuff, and she bought us each gloves. We didn't even have winter coats, and we were living in Carson City, Nevada, which is, it's cold in the winter, it gets snow. It's right there close to Tahoe. And, there were toys I always wanted. There were things I always wanted to do. Even with my mom worked all the time. She worked in the casinos. We grew up in Lake Tahoe. And so she would work at night and then sleep during the day. We'd go to school. So I was entertaining myself a lot. And so I think when I had my own kids, I just was like, we're going to do it. We're going to have fun. And, just that childlike innocence is a real thing. And you can just let yourself go and have fun. And, even with some of the families I work with, I'm like, you got to sit down on the floor and play with your child. This is fun. This is teaching them. This is interacting. This is engagement. Give them your full attention. Give them your time. And so maybe that's part of it, is that I just missed out on a lot from my own childhood. And so when I had my own kids, and then I just, with every client that I work with, I bring that mom energy first. So, mom energy, and then the science behind behavior analysis is there, because I always want them to feel safe and nurtured. There a lot of times with autism, there's the anxiety component. And then, of course, families have some anxiety with it as well, because they've just been they've been traumatized maybe by this diagnosis. If the child is engaging in interfering behaviors, they don't know what to do with that. They might not want to go out of their home or get together with friends or family. And so I'm always like, okay, I'm coming in. We're going to take our, we're going to make a Zen space here. We're going to love, we're going to have fun, no anxiety, and don't worry about it. If we go out in the community, let people stare at me. Don't worry if they stare at you. I'll tell them to back up. And, just surrounding people with that love. And I think that's what I needed growing up. I needed that. I needed that support. I needed people to hold my hand, and I never had it. And so I just am like, here's my hands, both of them. Let's do this. And let's have fun. Life is supposed to be fun. We're supposed to enjoy ourselves. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go to the park and just have the biggest time for free if you use your imagination. So I think maybe that was part of, this connection that I have with kids.
I love it. I love that this is something that I'm it's a theory and an observation, and what you're sharing is like, when people are like as Matthew I was saying, it's like on the other side of our trauma is the wisdom. But when we're standing in our wisdom, I feel like the gift that we share with the world is usually what we didn't have, when it's the gift that we didn't have. And I just think that's so beautiful. It's like how you're sharing what you didn't have when you were younger. And it's like a full circle. You're completing the past by giving that gift to everybody, so no one else has to deal with not having an opportunity to play. And I think it's just like, play is so important, and we forget. And it's like we act like, it's like we have our sandbox as kids, and the world is infinite, and everything it's just this beautiful experience of our imagination and what's possible in the world. And like, as kids, we're like kind of told, like, once you're an adult, there's no more playing, and it's like, the point is to enjoy the experience. And it's like, when we actually are like, when life and when the things we're doing as adults can occur as play and have ease and grace and fun and fulfillment, it's like it's a new experience of not only being human, but just like being adult doesn't mean there's no fun, there's no play. And it's like, that's how it should be. Like, we can do our work and still like be filled up in our hearts, and and go build a sandbox of our own creation in this world.
Mm-hmm. And the ego part of it that you do, like when you're dealing with adults, that part is set aside with children. And like with my clients, that it doesn't even exist with some of them. I don't even know if they'll lie to me. Yes, Miss Emily, that's what I did. I'm like, okay, because it's just so pure and beautiful. And, I love what I do. I really do. It's fun.
Yeah, it really shows, and it's really inspiring, what you've created, and what you're, how you've taken this vision and you've brought it into reality, and now it's impacting, a growing amount of people across the world. And, particularly, kids who have the heart to and have beautiful gifts that we're all going to receive, because you're giving them this gift of being able to play.
I hope so. Yeah.
Well, I would assert that hope has little to do with it, and you are actually doing that.
I'm trying. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Emily. We'll come back to you in a bit.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I wish we had more time to talk, because there's so much more I want to tease out, and I hope we can come back around to it. I have a feeling this might actually come full circle, because I've been watching Earl backstage, and he seems pretty tuned in. So I'm very curious where this actually goes.
Thank you so much, Emily, and we'll check back with you in a moment. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Emily, and thank you all at home tuning in. I want to take this moment to invite you to really share your story, share your gifts with us on the stage. What is it that you've experienced in your life and overcome that has allowed you to just stand in your purpose and your power to contribute to us all? Because you have something, or many things, I would say, that make this world better for us all. Whether it's the music you create, whether it's something that that knocked you off your horse and you had to just fight to stand back up. I think it must be a Nelson Mandela quote. It's like, don't judge me by my successes, but judge me by my failures and how many times I get up. And like, we want to hear is it's not the success that brings you power. It's who you're being in the face of failure and what you create in the face of that. And it's like, that's where the extraordinary people that gravitate to the stage, and we invite you to share the gift that you are, because you are a gift and you have something that benefits us all. And that's why we hold this space. So I want to invite you to be a part of this virtual stage and share the gift that you are. And that's part of our mission here at One Day. just bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And now, please let me welcome our next guest. We have with us Earl Ameen. Welcome, Earl.
Hello, and thank you for having me here today.
So happy to have you. I'm really we had a great conversation, I believe it was a few weeks ago, and I'll let you share your story, but you really you spoke when you were speaking, you really like saw through me, and I admire your ability to just see me, and I thought you really saw me fully, and it excites me just to know that you're a person in this world, because I can hear in the way you speak and the way you listen is such a compassionate, deep love, and I'm really excited to hear your story. So just welcome and thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for the experience that you and I shared together. And I'm happy to be here today. What can I say about my story? Is that my story, like everyone else's, is different. It is unique unto itself. I often refer to our respective lives as a snowflake, because no two snowflakes are the same. And when I came to that realization, it helped and supported me along my journey of identifying and finding myself, connecting to myself. And whenever I use the term myself, it is never one word. It is always two words: myself. It is in the space of self I have come to understand and believe and now practice. It is in the space of self that I'm able to determine what is selfish and what is self-full. And I seek to, though in my humanity sometimes I fail, to be more self-full than I am selfish. But my journey began on the day of my birth, and not just because that's true, but because on the day of my birth, as my mother tells the tale, I came out and just said, "Hey." My eyes were open. I grabbed the doctor's hand, and she tells me that the doctor looked at her and said, "Watch out for this one." So for me, it has always represented a level of awareness, awakenedness. And I'll be honest that I don't quite know or understand the terminology of woke, so I do not employ it. But a level of awareness and awakenedness, I believe I can demonstratively state. So my journey was like any child, but yet very, 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 very different. I did not come from a home that suffered a single parent. Both of my parents were lovingly married until their passing. And we were raised in a highly cerebral environment where learning was number one, behavior, courtesy, compassion for others was always a point of conversation. And my parents were excellent parents. Now, it's not that they did not make mistakes. And those mistakes, the mistakes that parents make, are often imprinted indelibly. They don't rub off, they don't smudge, they stick with you forever. And I learned that is really not the point. The point is how long I choose to stick to that impression. So the first experience that we have as human beings, typically we call that your impression or your imprinting. And my experience growing up with a level of the awareness, self-awareness, general awareness, and awakenedness that I had made my life in many cases a literal hell, because very early on I spoke the way I speak now because my father opened me to the opportunity to engage the unabridged dictionary, and he taught me how to read it. And I will always love him for that challenging adventure, but always the challenges that it created as a result. To be able to speak in a way that that adults, when I was 7 years old, people did not understand what I was saying. So I had to learn how to speak to people where they are in the manner in which they understand, and to almost forcibly learn that my connection to another human being is really centered in my ability to share vulnerably and authentically myself with them. The limiter to that, as I've learned and experienced, is that oftentimes fear, worry, doubt, self-centeredness, the need to protect, often comes between us in authentic connection. And whether that connection be with someone you've just met, a friend, a best friend, a sibling, family member, a wife or a husband, these things can exist between us and limit the flow of connection and limit the effectiveness of communication. So over my rearing, I had to learn how to just be a kid who speaks like a kid and plays like a kid. My fun was doing things that I could learn from. So I engaged in lots of activities where I walked away saying, I now know this. So here I am now at near 60 years of age, and I have learned much. And there was a point in time in my early 40s that I realized that I am is my power, that I am is how I create. And I began to hear myself speak creation into my life. And that all of the things that I was fearful of, all of the traumas, the hurts, the pains, even the things that I was encouraged and inspired by, were limited because I spoke, I am not. Oh, I'm not going to get that done. Oh, I'm not going to win. I never win. No one's going to listen. I'm not smart. All of the things that we say to ourselves that are born from an experience. And I've learned that an experience is not, by definition, me. And at that point, some more than 20 years ago now, I began to alter my language and develop the belief that what I speak about me is a universe. I create my universe. And this deepened my faith that now I understand what is meant that God is in me. And that ability to create within myself is active within me. And so therefore, I become accountable to myself for what I speak, because what I speak creates within me. And the evidence of that creation is that the world then responds to me on that basis. So as long as I was saying that I am not good enough, the world said, okay. And so long as I was saying that I am going to fail, then the world said, okay. And I had a moment that I have encapsulated into a story that I now share, which I call the eagle and the chicken. And I realized that the constant experience of disappointment and betrayal that I had experienced was because I was the betrayer. Now, that was hard. That was hard to deal with. It's hard to come to the realization that I was an eagle that wanted to be a chicken. And the chicken simply represents the common mass, and that I wanted to shrink myself down and raise my voice and make it higher so that people wouldn't be afraid of me because I'm a big man with a deep voice and a measure of intellect. And what would happen almost invariably is that eventually, in my attempting to be a chicken, I would be recognized as not being a chicken, as being an eagle. And eagles can eat chickens. So the fear that would come up and the recrimination, the pointing of fingers, for so long I felt was unjustified because it was never my intention, until I realized that it was actually my behavior. And from that point forward, I dismissed that whole proposition, shed myself of the chicken image, and I keep a picture on my wall here to my left that is the picture of a soaring eagle, that I may remind myself to be what I am, and the characteristics of being truth, being in truth, the characteristics of being authentic, the characteristics of being honest and integrous, just became those things. If you can think of stallions in front of a cart pulling it along, each of my stallions has a name, and but yet I am the driver. I am the driver. I can speed them up. I can slow them down. They will go where I will them to go. So I remain responsible and accountable to and for myself. And my mother and my father each had a contribution that were seeds within me that at various points in time would come up like lights and remind me. My mother would always say that love is something that you do. And my father said that seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And so knowing that love is something that you do, I could measure my intention by my actions. And therefore I learned that love by itself is not romantic. Love is commitment. Love is conviction. And commitment and conviction are two different things. We all make commitments every day. Sometimes it's simple and innocuous things like I commit to brushing my teeth today. I commit to taking a shower. But conviction is a whole nother animal. And when you become convicted, then you self-encapsulate. You hold on to it and you leave no place for it to go. And a conviction is not a conviction unless and until it costs you something and you pay upfront and in full. So I've come now to define love as the willingness to do for you and you and you. The willingness, the convicted willingness to do. And seeking knowledge from the cradle to the grave has, for me, made me a listener. And I heard it said that asking questions, I stopped making statements and I began to ask questions. So even in moments of conflict, rather than meet conflict with more conflict, I meet conflict with question. And almost always, unless someone is convicted in wanting to be in conflict, it eases, it brings about balance. And then learning not to pursue equality, because that has often been the great illusion, that to seek equality in relationship is a commitment to constancy of turmoil, because we are seldom equal. Now, it is said that a clock is, even a broken clock is right twice a day. However, the greatest thing I have learned to seek is balance, not equality. Because if someone says to me, I want to be in an equal relationship with you, okay, then you have to totally exclude that we must never change. The moment we set what equal is, we must never change. And that is the thing that we have absolutely no control over. We will always change. So when I set aside the pursuit of equality and sought and continue to seek only balance, I learned that not only within the scope of intimacy, within the scope of intimate relationship, family or friends, or even just meeting anyone, to allow for balance to occur, I no longer have to pursue, I've got to be heard. You have to hear me. You got to see me. Because sometimes I gain so much more in my silence, in my listening, in my hearing that other person. And when another person experiences being heard, that you have surrendered yourself to them, they become so open to surrendering themselves to me, to you. It has made phenomenal shifts, changes in my life. And so because I don't speak the language of limitation anymore, it does not mean that I do not experience failure. But I understand that it is not the experience of pain or failure or the experience of hate or the experience of anything that defines me. It is what relationship I choose to have with it and for how long. So as a man of spirit, a spiritual person, it doesn't mean that I don't get angry. It doesn't mean that I don't feel. But I do measure how much time I spend with that experience. Emily mentioned that stimulus, what stimulates us and how we react to it. Perfect. I can be stimulated like any other human being, but I have an awareness of choice that I can choose my relationship to that stimulus. And if it's something that pushes my buttons, then I can choose how much time I spend with that stimulus. So eventually it becomes like ping pong paddles. You've got this long distance being ping, then time ping. But eventually, as you limit and you master your relationship to experience and to stimulus, you limit the amount of time you interact with it. You remain in association with it. And next thing you know, your experience and the generality of life simply becomes a tone, a frequency. And you can still qualitatively interact with whatever you're experiencing. Know that it is an experience, not who I am. And now I become the master of it. And so I've simply learned over many years, and as I said, I'm nearing 60. I've learned how to love, and to love in a manner that the measure and the quality and experience of love is not by my definition, but is based on the feedback from those who are experiencing love from me, that they themselves express, I know that you love me. Now, the evidence of that, for those who might push back against that, is think of any moment in your lifetime, any moment whatsoever in which you felt loved, and then speak it aloud. And in that utterance, you will always describe an action. I heard the word verb. That love is an action. That everything we do is an action. It is not contemplation. It's not necessarily, though it has its place, I think, therefore I am. But it can be said that if I think it and I believe it, And I define belief as being in the living of. If you are not being in the living of it, then it is not your belief. See, if I think it, I believe it, I do it, it becomes. And with that simple, short equation, I become a creator. I become a creator within my own universe. I become a king within my own kingdom. And kingdom is the king's domain. I become king of my own domain, not king of yours. Otherwise, I would not need to employ communicative skills and tactics. But yes, I am the king of my domain, and I must employ communicative and relational skills to be able to have my domain interact with your domain so that they connect and they overlap durably, so that the domains expand and connect. And next thing we know, we have a universe of connection. And I believe that that is the intention here with One Day. And this is why I'm here, just to share one person's point of view and experience, that the world is vast, to be sure, but the world within us is far vaster, and is a far greater experience to seek to master, to become king or queen of the universe within you. Because as you accomplish that, you will see the world outside of you begin to reflect the truth of who you are. And that's when you know that you know. So for me, I want to close by saying that I am a human being, and I am love, and I am intention, and I am vulnerability. I am transparency, and I am also power. I am impact. I am endurance and durability. And most of all, I am connection. And I invite those who wish to connect authentically and vulnerably to do so. It's my honor and my privilege to be here today. And that's all I have to say about that.
Earl, thank you so much. That was profound and so powerful. And your words are just, they warp reality. And I mean, as you were explaining, like you're speaking, you know, I can hear it, like just, and how you describe that, how we are creators, and how, you know, and how, you know, how you were focused on the I am rather than the I am not, and how most of my life I've been the I am not, and why I can't be this and why I shouldn't be this. And it's so powerful hearing you share, I mean, everything you've shared. And I love what you were saying about the chicken and the hawk. Like I can so relate to that, and I feel like most people probably can. And what's interesting in my experience, and I'd love to hear yours, is I thought I was afraid of being powerless, but I've really been afraid to be I've been more afraid to be the eagle than I was afraid to be the chicken.
Yes. With great power comes great responsibility. Mm-hmm. And we often fear our ability to respond, because it becomes a circle, and all mm-hmm. truth is circular. And you can test this, that when you know it's a truth, just like with science, all science is repeatable results. Truth always meets itself. It always proves itself. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we are engaged in sharing or identifying your truth or that truth or your perception of truth. But it's when we break through and we listen, we engage, we question, and we receive, that all of a sudden we determine what the truth is. And then we can prove it, because it's always what it is.
Yeah. It's powerful.
I'd like to dive into that a little bit more if you're open to it.
Sure.
You said it at the very end. You said, I am love, I am commitment, I am power, I am. But you talk about love as a verb. And I wonder if you would like step into that distinction. Like, for me, um, the experience of love has simply been an experience. Like, it is something that I am. And from being that, actions come forth. And those actions are loving. So the action of acceptance, the action of commitment, the action of saying hello to someone as I'm walking down the hall. You know, whatever that action happens to be, but it's coming from what I am, which is loving, which is love. And I wonder if you would just dive into that a little bit more, like how you define that distinction for yourself and what led you to that particular point of view.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I, like so many human beings, walk through our lives only knowing of love by what we receive. And I have known, because my mother was Child Protective Services growing up, I have known children who thought that going to sit in the closet voluntarily versus being shoved in the closet and facing the corner in the dark was an expression of, hey, I know you love me because I have this corner in the closet. And I learned that a woman's heart is a magical place because I understand love, and not the romantic love, but that love can be an illusion if we do not know that love is always, only, and ever measurable by action. And when we experience the impact of what is playing at being loved, then we can lose our way. And one of the ways to test that is, am I growing? And what am I becoming? You know, I study words from an etymological standpoint. I look at the original intention of a word, and oftentimes words are commonized or colloquialized. And, you know, become is a very powerful word, you know. And I realized one day that when I realized that I am love, I realized that I am become. And man, it just thunderclap of inspiration and clarity that if we want to be in the experience of love, you'll never find it outside of yourself. You'll never find it if you think that there's love out there waiting on me. You'll never find it. But I can prove to you that in any person that says, I have met the person whom I love and loves me, and you say, how do you know? They will only ever tell you what that person has done, and they will only ever express to you what they are willing to do. All the rest of it's fluff. All the rest of it is this fantastical perception that love in and of itself must be romantic in order for it to be love. No, love is an emotive state, emotional state that we apply to the framework of what love actually is. So you can build on that. Love is something that you do. Love is the willing commitment to act to your benefit. And then you can shape around it experiences that include romance. I will tell you that here to give you evidence that talk to men who have been in the trenches, dying for one another. That is as much an expression of love as a mother feeding a child. Is that I love you. I will die for you. I will kill for you. I didn't say murder. I will kill for you. This is love. And love is not always intrinsically only romantic. So when you understand that, think of a house. You build a foundation first, then you put a frame up, and then you put all of the accoutrements, all of the wrappings around it. What is it that makes the edifice that is the house the house? It's the foundation that it's built on. Everything else is added to it to give the foundation purpose. Love is something that you do. It is your willingness. And willingness is so key because change happens. You know that that's the great pushback against love is change. I don't feel like it today. Okay, that's changed. Well, we fell out of love with one another. I used to love him. I used to love her, but we fell out of love. Well, that's because change occurs, which is why there has to be a willingness, because willingness is ongoing. I love my wife. I know that I do. And I don't have to say a word and let her walk in here and she will tell you, my husband loves me. And she will begin only to share with you the evidence of what I do. And his willingness that as I change, he remains committed to the doing. It's constant, it's evidence. Oftentimes we're given language, so we only get half of it. You know, trust is earned. How many times have you heard that? Well, that's just half of the truth. Trust is earned and maintained. Because that's why so many people are so blown away and disappointed when somebody breaks the trust, because nobody was maintaining it. Nobody was holding a standard that so long as you are doing this measurably, then the trust is there. And if you think that trust isn't tested or shouldn't be tested, I'll never trust you. I don't ask people to trust me. I ask them to allow me to earn the opportunity to earn their trust. Give me the opportunity to earn your trust. And when people say, hey, trust me, or you can trust me, I simply say, that remains to be seen.
I still feel like I'm missing something in that. And this might actually be a good opportunity to bring Emily in too and let her have a chance to comment on all this as well.
Please.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Emily.
Hey, Emily.
Oh, you're muted. Just a heads up. There you go.
Thank you. It was when you were talking about those limiting beliefs, and it was, Abram, when he started off, he talked about being the victim of his own story. I was that for so many years. And I had to realize I was telling the same story over and over again. This happened when I was a kid. This happened with my mom. I didn't have a dad. Now I say that as, that's my power, right? And so there's no victimization in there anymore. But I also had to do that piece of belief. I had to say, why do I think I'm so limited? I'm so powerful, right? I started in the deepest, darkest part of the valley, and I've been climbing up to the top of that mountain. A lot of people start halfway up the mountain. You get stronger as you climb out of the valley, up the mountain. And so, everything that you said, I was like, yep, I agree, because that's how I had to overcome so many things as well. And it was that I am not, but I am. And I had to believe in that inner dimension, as you were talking about. And the love piece of it, I have a comment on that but I just wanted to share that because I truly felt everything that you said.
What's your comment?
Oh, so you were talking about love and what true love is. So love is supposed to be unconditional, right? One of my favorite quotes from an Indian guru from the early 20th century, Paramahansa Yogananda. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. The Autobiography of a Yogi, Steve Jobs shared that book with so many people, but he said that in this world, everyone wants to use us for his own purpose. Only God can truly love us. The ordinary human being does not know what love is. When somebody gives you pleasure, you tend to think you love that person. But in reality, it is yourself you love. Your ego has been pleased by the other person's attention. That is all. Would you go on loving that person if he should cease to give you pleasure? And that's always been, when I read that for the first time, I was like, okay, so a lot of the things that I experienced in my life that I thought was love was exactly that egocentric love. It was conditional. And then once people stopped doing what I thought they should be doing, I withdrew my love, they withdrew their love, and we went our separate ways. But as you were mentioning, that motherly love, it is almost like it is that divine love. It's unconditional. I'm going to protect you most of the time. And if that's not there, then that just means maybe that person didn't experience that in their life and didn't get a chance to learn how to love in that way. But yeah, what you were saying about that, so many people experience that superficial love now, and they're not able to go so deep. And it's about their ego. What am I getting? And if you're not giving me what I want, then I don't love you anymore.
I'd like to comment that I used to believe that love could be unconditional. I no longer believe that. And I no longer believe that for this reason, that there are conditions that can change. We see it quite often. The parent who understands that the child has chosen to live a life of addiction and has every opportunity to choose differently, to relieve themselves of that addiction so that the parent can be relieved of the circumstances of that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't do it, I'm done with you. You're cut off. You're done. Now, I may still hold the basis of willingness to love you, but it's subject to the conditions that you make, to the change that you make. So as human beings, I think that we do love conditionally, but we can elevate ourselves to be less impacted, less controlled by the conditions around us, because you're right. And the yogi is correct that so long as our ego, and the ego by itself is not a bad thing, that so long as our ego is fed, then we can become more or less subject to the conditions that exist in the exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this actually ties into a couple of things. And the first one is belief and the source of belief. Personally, I've experienced two different sources of belief. There is external and internal. So external is all of the programming and the indoctrination and the stories and the preconceived notions that already existed when I was born that I picked up on as I was growing up. So, the one way that I find to talk about it is what was present when you were born. Like, the mind doesn't have any programming yet. There is no ego there. It's just awareness. Consciousness is another word that people have used. It's just pure, just information gathering, noticing. And then as we grow up, like, we start taking on, because we seem to live in a world where We are constantly told what other people think it is instead of being invited to discover what it could be to ourselves. We start taking on beliefs about what this place is and how to interact with it and how to hold ourselves. And then sometime around the age of 5 or 6, those little programs that we've collected over the last 5 years start to coalesce into what most people think of personality or ego or, an identity. And that identity, for me is Matthew, this idea that I am Matthew. And in reality, Matthew is just a construct. It's just a program with which I interact with the world. And so that's external belief. And then there's internal belief, which is something that I've referred to in the past as intuition or God or love, or even some people even call it the Akashic Records or Holy Spirit or whatever. But it's that thing that is bigger than me, than Matthew, than even the soul. And so whenever I look at belief, like I don't see belief as good or bad. I don't see anything as good or bad, right, wrong. That's not a world that I exist in anymore. But the question to me always comes back, what is the source of that belief? Is it external or internal? And, there may be more sources that I'm not aware of. I don't know. But those two are the ones that I'm aware of now. And those are the ones that I play with. And so what I have started to play with now is looking at an idea, a concept, and asking the question, what is the source of that? Is it internal or external? If it's external, I tend to just discount it automatically. Those are ideas that I don't feel drawn to play with in this point in time. If it's internal, then the question becomes, does it resonate with me right now? And if the answer is yes, then, or if the feeling is open and expansive is another way of looking at it, then, okay, let's try that belief on. And let's see how I can play with that in the world. And what can I create from that belief? Because it seems to be that belief is actually a manifestation of power. Like what I believe is what I create. So tying that back to what Emily said about the lint roller, I love that analogy. If I think of me, like the true source me, as just the handle of that lint roller, and then the paper package that gets put on top of it is the ego personality. As I'm going through the world, I'm picking up stuff. I peel that paper off, it's clean again. But the ego isn't gone. It's just a fresh ego that starts all over again. Then I start picking up stuff, and I peel it back. And eventually, maybe in this lifetime, maybe not, I might get back to a point where the paper is gone completely, and I just exist as awareness, as pure whatever I was when I was a child, or when I was first born. And then who knows what that looks like? I have no clue, like no earthly idea. I don't even know if that's possible. So bringing this all back around, like I get this feeling that we actually mean two different things when we talk about love. Because to me, love isn't conditional or unconditional. It just is. Like there doesn't need to be an attribute, an adverb to love. It just is. And whenever an attribute is added, then to me, that steps back into maybe egoic love or heartfelt love, are two ways to describe it. But it's not just love anymore. It's not love. It's love and something that has been added by ego, maybe, possibly.
I always think of it as like agape love. We know agape love is like that God love, right? That source love. Like the story of the prodigal son in the Bible. The father, his son goes off, one son stays home, And he's still, when the son that went off and did everything that he did, he comes home and he's just like, it's okay. You did, I'm going to allow, that's free. I'm allowing you. You are doing what you want to do. You came into this life to have an experience. Who am I to limit you, right? And then the other is attachment love. And the attachment love is I want to control you. I want to possess you. I want to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. And so it's just like what you said, that you had two different versions of love. And it's the same, there's that egoic type, which is the attachment. And then there's that source, which is the agape type of love. That's allowing. And it's just, I'm here, okay, you did something. Don't worry about it. Life is life. We're on a journey.
Yeah, it's like, that is a state of being to me. Like, that is just simply existing, like there's nothing else to it. It's just, and this is where I feel like language starts to break down, right? Because in the retreats that I run, in the workshops that I've gone through and participated in, one thing that I always am very careful to point out is, don't believe anything I say. The words are not the truth. The words are simply an invitation into an experience of what you really are. There's that old Chinese saying, the finger points at the moon, but the finger's not the moon. It's kind of the same thing. Like, I cannot speak what this experience is to me. I can only speak words that might invite others into having that experience for themselves.
Yeah, I think there's I forget the exact saying, but it's a Buddhist saying. The Buddha says, if you meet me on the road, and I tell you I'm the Buddha, or somebody tells you they're the Buddha, murder them, right? Because it's not going to be true. Right? So kind of the same thing as what you're saying. Yeah, we are that awareness, but we accumulate so much that we become something else. We have to just dismantle that accumulation of stuff to get to our pure self.
I imagine, since we've used this terminology, I imagine a beacon that is built to sit upon a platform called existence. And that over time, what we do is that we surround that beacon with things that eventually becomes a dwelling wherein that beacon exists, but its light is either completely obfuscated, it is diminished, it is hidden away by what we have built around it.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not mean that the light does not exist. It does not mean that the light is any less pure. It just means we have to recognize what we have put around it and how we limit others being able to bask in it, to receive from it, to be guided by it. It's when we become aware of that, we begin to dismantle that edifice that we've built around it, that we come to a point of enlightenment. And our light is now free to shine from ourselves to and for the benefit of those who encounter it. The words are simple. The action behind it is rather challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That frequency, if you think of a light bulb, the closer you get to a light bulb, the higher the frequency, the further away, the lower the frequency, the darkness settles in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about our internal frequency, raising that to a higher level. But if we have those dark thoughts, those dark things that we've been conditioned to believe, Matthew talks about those beliefs, that will pull us further from that light. And so it is about really shedding those beliefs to allow that illumination, to get closer. We are as close as we could be, right? It's in every cell of our being, but we don't always allow it to glow, I guess would be a good way to put it, right? Because we're just so conditioned to be angry or to be bitter or to be victims. But we're none of those things.
This is powerful. There's so much to unpack here, and I love that we're talking about love, because it's like it's the mystery of the experience versus all the things that we put on top of the essence of who we are and the experience that we put on top of it. And I mean, one thing it's interesting, just kind of back to one point that Earl made, and I don't know what to do with this information, but just a thought that came up is, it's like sometimes an act of love is to release somebody from your life. Mm-hmm. And it's because you love them, knowing that you giving them your energy is something that will not serve them. And it's like, and that begs the question, because like what you were saying earlier about how the Earl about conditional versus unconditional with like a child with addiction, at a certain point, there's a condition. It's like, hey, well, since this person is not ceasing or taking responsibility for their addiction, I'm going to cut them off. And I mean, there's so many romantic relationships, there's so many situations that are similar to that, but it's like at a certain point, like, where is the love? I mean, sometimes the love is in releasing them, that in hopes to hold the space for love for them, where they will discover for themselves and overcoming their dark valley, but still being that beacon for them, and like inviting them to, like, I'm always here for you, and you have to learn what you need to learn in order for you to receive the love I have for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is such a beautiful like conversation to look at, because like at our core and our essence, love is what brought us into this world, and love is what we hope to leave this world with. And it's like, and the definition of that in this inquiry is it's a beautiful thing to just to inquire on. So I'm really just like, I'm so like honoring and appreciating this conversation. This is one of the deepest conversations I think I've ever participated in about love, because it's like, there's so much to it, and like in receiving and giving love and reciprocating love, and our experience of being the love that we wish to see in the world, and sometimes it doesn't come back. Sometimes we give love and it doesn't come back as love. And it's like, is that love? Or but it is. And it's like, and I mean, back to the Bible, it's like, Jesus, I mean, and he loves everybody. Mm-hmm. And he was not loved by a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And by definition, I would still say he was loved. But at the same time, like, we're the people. So it's like, and I think it's, for me, it's like, it comes back to identity. When we identify as that who we are not, when I identify with I am not, I feel like the love is more of a undefined. We're not even, it doesn't process the same as it would when we are I am. When I am not. Mm-hmm. We're not. We can't really perceive the love that we're able to receive.
And a good example of that, Abram, is that, and Emily, you used this as an example in the story of the prodigal son. It was love of the father of his son that allowed him to let his son go. Here's your inheritance, go. But it was also love that allowed the father to see his son returning, to say, welcome home.
Right. And it's that non-attachment. I'm not going to be attached to that other being. Let them freely go. We think of karma. We think of what Jesus said, you reap what you sow. Abram and I spoke about this when we met. And if you plant a tomato seed, you're always going to get a tomato, right? If you plant an acorn, you're always going to get an oak. So if you're planting these seeds that possibly could be destructive for your life, that's what you are going to reap, the harvest of those destructive seeds. If it is drug addiction or gambling addiction or food addiction, whatever it is. And as somebody who loves them, you just offer that love and that prayer, and you just offer that space. And you don't pray negative words over them. You pray love over them. And I'm waiting for you when you're ready to return. If you need my assistance, I offer it freely. If you reject it, then it is that prodigal son situation. Go, take your inheritance, but you're going with my love. I don't have to participate. Never do I have to participate, but I'm always here for you when you're ready to return. And
Yes.
that to me would be the truest form of love on this planet. Just that non-attachment. Okay, let's go.
And we let them go knowing and loving, attaching our love to the beacon of light that they are, not what they've chosen to surround that beacon of light with. So
Mhm.
go have your experience. But I see you, I love you, that beacon of light. And when it comes back to you, then welcome back the light, which is why we can reject the behavior without rejecting the person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we also, now we know so much about behavior. We understand what may have planted the seeds, what the soil was, what the preparation was for them to engage in that behavior and
Yeah.
go down that road. Um, that's part of it as well.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
no pun intended, but I love this conversation, and I think it's a powerful thing to look at, and I well, just what you're saying about seeds, Emily. It's like it's the seeds that we all plant. It's like in this present moment, this sacred moment that is the only moment. We all have a choice to plant seeds, and it's like no matter what our circumstances, we can plant seeds of and seeds of joy, seeds of love, seeds of laughter, seeds of compassion, like this could be a piece of art that we create. This could be a sonnet. This could be just an offering of a helping hand to help to a friend. But it's the seeds that we plant, with our individual, the gifts that we have to share. When we plant seeds and when we're intentional with that, and as a community, when we are all planting seeds, we all can reap the benefits, the fruits and flowers of the seeds that we plant. And that's what this movement is about. It is like, what if we all were intentional about planting seeds that were the gifts that we all have to share? And it's like, and to all hold that space. That's what inspires me. What can we create from that place when we're actually identifying with who we are, with the I am, rather than the I am not? And like planting the seeds from I am, that is what it gives me the chills of what is possible for humanity when we choose individually and collectively that we are, and we choose this. And I want to, this has been an amazing conversation. I want to give you both of you a brief last words, but just say really quickly, I just really just honor both of you. And I'm just so honored and privileged to have you share your story and your wisdom and your insight and your just beautiful, inspiring words it's affected me deeply. And I know our listeners and viewers as well. So thank you for being here. But please, I would like to extend the opportunity to say any last words for each of you.
Well, just what you just said about the choice, this will be real quick, Earl. You're saying that I am space, planting those seeds. Don't plant what you're seeing out there, which is not the real stuff, like Matthew was saying, like that. Don't plant more of that, but plant that authentic stuff, the authentic love, the authentic seeds, the true change. Like we can change. And I love what you are doing with this one day virtual stage, because you do want to share that message and you are planting those seeds. That one apple, you hand somebody an apple and those seeds can turn into an orchard one day. And I think that you have planted your apple orchard, and one day, it's definitely going to change. Maybe it already is like, but 10 years, 20, 40, 50 years from now, who knows what could happen just from these encounters. So, I love it. I think it's wonderful. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Thank you.
I will simply say that I'm genuinely blessed and appreciative of the opportunity, to be sure, but also the input from each and every one of you. Emily, I think that you are not even, as you mentioned, climbing the mountain. You haven't reached your peak yet. And I think that the adventure for you is going to be profound and uniquely, globally impactful. And I look forward to being a beneficiary of your truth in the world.
Thank you.
And thank you both, Abram and Matthew, for this platform. I agree with Emily that it is a significant doing. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what the consequence of our participation is here today. But I do know that the first law of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed and transferred. So that is what this medium allows for. So take the energy of love, take the energy of self, take the energy of truth and positive intention, and roll all of that up. And what do you get? Love. So go forth and prosper.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you both. That's been such a privilege and an honor to have you both. And I would love to have you back again soon and inquire more on this grand mystery that is this experience of this world, and who we are and who we can choose to be. And it's just such a humbling experience talking with both of you. So thank you. I'm just so honored. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you all at home for hanging out and being part of this conversation. Again, I want to invite you to participate on this virtual stage. We want to hear your story, your insight, your wisdom, what you've overcome and faced that have allowed you to be you and to spread and plant the seeds of love that you are. That's what lifts us all up. It is what you've overcome and your sharing of living to tell about it that gives us all the courage to not only step further, but to lift each other up. And that's really what this is about. We rise together. And that's what the vision of this movement is: humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique contributions, genius, and ultimately their gifts being magnified and valued through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. Thank you again to Earl and Emily for being our guests today. And thank you all for tuning in. We will see you all next week on Tuesday. I love you all. Be safe, be well. And as always, one day is today. Peace, everybody.